Hey y'all, it's Passport Bro Vicious. Back at it with another one. I'm currently watching Superfly 75 on Oshay Duke Jackson. That's what I wanted to talk about. So, he's been doing a lot of these videos talking about the scamming in Africa, right? In Uganda. And I want to talk about, he's not really a real, Pan-African pro-black in my opinion, And I could be an asshole and say like, hey, you're not in West Africa, where we came from. But that's another story. That's just being an asshole. But what I wanted to say is I don't think he's a real true Pan-African. And I think a lot of Pan-Africans, they focus on the wrong things that's holding back the entire group. And that's what it is when it comes to, people like him. And I think what the problem is, he's talking about the scamming with the out there in Uganda, even in Ghana, but definitely with the Uganda and the head lady out there. She's trying to do the whole repatriation, the passport situation. They getting scammed. And Superfly 75, he thinks he got scammed himself in regards to Pan-Africanism, but he's complaining about, he's got some content, but it's not really enough to really make the argument. So myself, it's probably him, but he said he wouldn't, but myself going forward, I am going to record his lives on this Uganda channel for more content, so I can try to make an assessment. I'd probably even try to send it to him as well, but he was saying like, he's not going to. He said he'll have the lives when nobody's up. He's talking about the scamming going on in his Uganda channel, and he's talking about that. He's how he has it light at night and nobody's really up watching it. You know what I'm saying? So he talks about that, and then he'll quickly delete him because why? He's in another country, talking about another country. And like I said, with him, you're just a trick in a foreign country, and you want to stick with this lie that you mentioned in one of your videos earlier this year, talking about, it's better to be there in Africa, in regards to like talking to ladies, tricking and stuff like that. But you're sitting up there thinking that they're not gonna do you like these other people. But like I said, that don't make no sense, you know what I'm saying? As soon as the Kenyans don't perceive you as theirs, as their tribe, they're gonna come at you. Just like the situation with Jay Rello. Of course they're gonna make a distinction of African American and black man, because you're not the other. You're not even East African. You know what I'm saying? You're West African. You know what I'm saying? So you're talking about this pro-black stuff, and it's just a weak argument in spite of what white people did back in the past, and it's not enough, it's not important enough reason. You got way too much corruption for one, which is why it can't really move forward. And you got way more important issues, like for example, I'm Fulani descent. I took a DNA test to find my tribe, I'm Fulani from Nigeria, the land of Hausa land in northern Nigeria, right? That means my ancestors came from that region in Nigeria. So, Nigeria. But my point I'm making is that you sitting up here talking, is that you pro-black and all that sort of stuff, you would be mentioning about what's going on with the war stuff, potential war within the Sahel region. Now, you mentioned Ibrahim Traore. You mentioned him, you want to talk all this pro-black stuff and mention him, but you ain't talking about the real problem. For one, it's like, he's killing, or he's been, the alleged that he's killing Fulani people out there, a genocide. You don't talk about the potential genocide towards the Fulani people. And you also not talking about the war, potential war that's happening in that Sahel region, because under their leadership, under Ibrahim Traore and Burkina Faso, the president out there in Mali and the other country, you're not talking about you're not talking about the potential civil war over there that's happening. You're not talking about the fact that, hey, because of the Sahel region is the desertification is causing people to have mass migration to move southern into Nigeria. And this whole region, like Ghana and all this sort of stuff, because of the terrorism, because they're being recruited out there in the Sahel/Sahara region, that's leading to terrorism and leading to the threat of all of that descending down on West Africa towards a more lush, tropical area of West Africa. You know what I'm saying? You're not talking about that. If you're a real pro-black, you will be talking and speaking about that. But that's how I know he's not a real Pan-African. You just care about black success as long as it's black. But you never talk about the truth that, hey, wait a minute. For example, the Republic of Biafra, right? That was the civil war they had in Nigeria, in southeast Nigeria. The Igbo separated. Okay, cool. They had a civil war. Southeast Nigeria gets reincorporated back into Nigeria. Okay, cool. But what you're not really talking about, when you talk about this Pan-African stuff and pro-black stuff, if the whole continent was Pan-African, you have a bunch of Republic of Biafra all over the entire continent of West Africa, the entire continent of Africa, right? And that's because it doesn't work, because not everybody's going to identify with it as far as the black world is concerned. Not all the blacks in the Northern Africa, even Central or Southern Africa, all these different places. Not everybody's going to be in agreement with it. And that's how white people had interfered. It still would have failed because of it. You know what I'm saying? And I truly do think that he was from, obviously the Black Panthers, they out there from the West Coast in California. I really do think he came from a pro-black Pan-African family, right? And I think he's had a axe to grind since a lot of black people left the pro-black space in the 1990s. But he and someone like Anton Daniels, they sit there and come at, Bill Clinton. Okay, cool, But Bill Clinton still brought black people the most jobs. And granted, there's other reasons why it failed, but he still brought us the most jobs for one. Obama came in second despite inheriting a bad economy. You know what I'm saying? And that speaks volumes to him. But that just speaks volumes to the fact that, hey, the Pan-African thing has not had any real substance. That's still a substance. It's like what you think about Bill Clinton, the whole crime bill stuff with Biden. It's like you think about Bill Clinton. He still brought us jobs and all that sort of stuff. And that's what matters for black people because, that is tangible. Those things are tangible. And Pan-Africanism, black people have been making jokes about it since the 1970s. Nothing about it is tangible. It stopped being tangible. And what O'Shea does is not really tangible. He's just taking advantage of the fact that it's like the leaders of BLM sitting up there, talking all this pro-black stuff, saying, shaming you for, he'll call out people for shaming black people for not donating, but he'll do the same thing in reverse towards people who aren't donating. And he's just using that money just to, up end of the business, but also just keep himself afloat. And he's doing it in a foreign country where he's tricking, and he can have where his U.S. dollar has more strength, and he can just be out there tricking, and on the women, pretty much. You know what I'm saying? And he'll just do it that way. And that's that's just what it is. But his Pan-African beliefs, it's not working because it is small. Not everybody African over there is going to agree with it. Like I said, you have a bunch of Republic of Biafras all over the continent, and you can't call them all Uncle Toms and sellouts. That may mess around and be the majority. But what you going to say? You're going to flip a script and say, oh, most black people are Africans are sellouts and coons or something. You can't say that that's the physical majority or roughly close to half. You can't really say that about black people or the African world. That's how you know Pan-Africanism isn't working, because it's too flawed and it's too all over the place, and there's no tangibleness, and you just can't keep blaming the AU, the African Union. Of course it's corrupt. It's not everybody. And the thing is, you can't call it tribalism because that's technically different races of black-skinned people. You just can't call it that. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't mean our issues aren't important, but the Pan-African thing is just unrealistic. You know what I'm saying? Because of the corruption, but it would have happened regardless of European white people influence. It would have happened regardless. You got to look at the bigger picture. We have an entire continent that we need to help take control over it and get past the racial, ethnic, tribalism per se. You know what I'm saying? That's a lot of power for one group of people or one person. You know what I'm saying? But O'Shea doesn't bring anything real tangible to the continent of Africa because he's just a small businessman. He's just a guy who's talking, and that's all he is. He's not really bringing real tangible business. And you want to talk about, you have to, they're not going to give you no leeway. Well, of course they're not. You know what I'm saying? You're coming from a different country that's more powerful economically and all that sort of stuff. You have to bring your A game, just like the people do in their country. And he acknowledges that, but he's not looking at it. He's not looking at it really from their perspective. You have to add value. You know what I'm saying? Like, for example, richest man in Africa, I think it's Ogote. He's Hausa. He's our cousin from the Hausa tribe in Nigeria. He's the richest man in Africa, but he still brings value. But if I'm going to come over here, I'm going to break bread and all that sort of stuff and kind of get someone on his level. I have to add value, bring value. So if I come with hey, I have this business, we want to do shipping, across the, within the continent, from the continent back to the U.S. and towards Haiti as well, and back towards Africa, as far as selling goods, that's real. That's a real tangible thing. That brings in jobs for the Africans in Nigeria, but also along the coast as well. You know what I'm saying? And also, brings jobs to African Americans and even in Haiti. And that can thus help stabilize Haiti. So when he's talking these things, he's talking them, but he's not really about that because he's not really doing that himself. He's just, a small fry, a small fish. And he just wants to carve his little way out and talking about what you're supposed to do. And all that sort of stuff. He's really just like another Umar Johnson in that way. He's more legitimate than Umar, but he is similar. And that's another thing too. Just because this between us and white people, they may call out their people, but they don't deal with them. You still want to bring up Umar Johnson every time you get because he's right on these talking points. It don't mean nothing. He's right on these talking points. He's not right. Stop talking about him. Move forward. That's how we move forward from those type of people. When you're talking about, you're a real doctor, but you're out here wasting business. Like you're wasting time doing a freaking a celebrity channel, and you're talking about nothing based on medical, which is your choice, but you're also not talking anything pro-black, because you're not even talking about the situation in the Sahel region, or even Kenya. You only talk about Kenya because that's popular, and I think you didn't go to South Africa, not just because of the racism, but because their currency is probably stronger, and you probably would have come to conclusions that you came to a lot sooner because you wanted to prove Pan-Africanism. But at the same time, business-wise, you got to step up everywhere, and that includes down there. And I think you just want to not work with white people, or at least from a distance, but you can't really avoid it because the same people you want to work with, they want to work with either you and or them. So, but yeah, that's my thoughts on that video. Like I said, I'm gonna start trying to record his Kinganda lives because he like I said, Superfly 75. He's right. He's been deleting his lives, and I'm gonna start recording them. And when I have seen them, it's like late at night or something like that, and on certain days, and it's just random. That's why I do follow his Kendiano channel so I can try to catch the lives. And he don't even post when he does have a potential live because he knows it's going to be recorded. And a lot of the times I caught the tail end of it, or maybe probably halfway. But I'm gonna start doing that because he needs to be checked and he needs to be criticized for his flaws in regards to Pan-Africanism. So I'm gonna catch you guys on the next one.